Hello, everyone, and welcome to Insight's HPE Aruba Network as a Service webinar. My name is Tyler Pfeiffer, and I'm one of the directors here at Insight covering our X as a Service solutions. And joined with me today is John Painter, who's one of our services principal. I want to just hand it over quickly to John and do a quick introduction. John?
Tyler, thank you. As Tyler mentioned, I am a service principal within our managed services arena, which is where our HPE Aruba network as a service programs are conducted. This is how we go to market through our managed services. Good to be with you today, and looking forward to a great conversation.
Awesome. So where we really want to start is, what is as a service? Okay. When you look at as a service, it's not so much a technology discussion. Okay. As you can see, there are many different ways that you can procure product and services. And one of those ways is as a service, right? I've got your CapEx up here, or a capital expenditure, right? Where you're really paying upfront for all of those products, the services associated with them, which may be over time, but ultimately the bulk of those purchases usually end up being upfront, okay? And in today's world, with the macroeconomic challenges, preserving cash is very critical to organizations. And, as we continue to move forward in this as a service world where, everything's a subscription or a consumption model, what we're starting to see is a lot more traction towards that operating model or an OpEx model. And another way you can accomplish that is through a lease or a financing option. But again, in today's world, a lease may not be the right option for you as a client. So understanding that you have a third option here, which is not a lease, right? And also doesn't have all those upfront costs associated with it, is really that as a service or subscription or even a consumption model. And when we look at as a service models, there are some benefits that when looking at how you're procuring your product, okay, there are values that you can use to really get around some of the obstacles that might be in front of you. Okay, one of those might be over provisioning, right? I need to purchase for the next 3 years, and I don't know where my business is growing. If I'm expanding locations, like, what am I going to do, and how do I plan for some of those unknowns, right? And in a CapEx model, that's where you need to kind of take a best guess at what is it that I need to buy for a longer period of time. And an as a service model, you can actually buy as you go, right? So you purchase these products on a subscription basis, and if you need additional access points or you're standing up a new site, you don't need to go back out to the world to say, okay, I need to get pricing, I need to get a config done, I need to understand what the specs are to make sure it matches my existing network. All of these things are already included in this as a service model. Once you sign up, it really provides you with that benefit to grow your network as you need and at the pace that you need, which helps you avoid some of that over provisioning, right? And again, as a service, it gives you that predictable monthly cost. Okay, so when you're looking at an OpEx model, some of that predictability and budget planning is key to running your business, right? So when we talk about how we procure our IT needs and solutions, it's important to understand that there is this third option, if you will. Historically, your as a service has been for, I'll say, virtual products, right? Your software or cloud. And what we're starting to see some trends on, right, is how do we take that model that people have come to know and love and start looking at how we accomplish that with on-premises infrastructure and hardware, right? And again, our friends over at HPE Aruba have developed this program around their networking stack that allows clients to subscribe to the service, right, which includes all the networking equipment needed to stand it up. We can wrap our managed services around it so that we can really ensure that that network is up and running, it's being patched, it's being monitored to ensure that, at the end of the day, you've got that peace of mind that your network is being managed and monitored on an ongoing basis. Okay. Go ahead, John.
Sorry to interrupt. I wanted to take advantage of what you've just laid out. If there's anything that we're hearing from our clients today is bring us more flexibility, bring us more options to the table so that we are really focused on the business outcomes that we're trying to see, and give us a number of options of how to get there. And as you mentioned, I think we spend quite a bit of time helping to help differentiate between this not being a lease. That's a common misperception about these programs. This as a service model is relatively new in this particular space, especially in the network arena. And clients seem to be really adopting this because it does give them a newer option that they have not previously taken advantage of. So just wanted to just kind of emphasize what you said there about the third option being in such a growth pattern today.
Absolutely, John. And I think, for our clients that are viewing this, if you're in the IT arena and you're really looking at it from an engineering or architecture perspective, it's important to understand that, like John said, making sure that, the budget owners, if you will, or your finance CFOs of the world, right, within your organization are open to these different options, right? I would say most people are familiar with leasing and CapEx, right? But because some of these models on an on-premises infrastructure are fairly new to the market, it's important that, as a director in IT or CIO, that you bring those finance stakeholders into these conversations, right? Because they might look at this and really understand the benefit of, say, cash flow as an example, or preserving that capital, or the time value of money, right? And
Sure.
Understanding how that applies, right? So, we talked about, the as a service from kind of a financial perspective, right? But what we're starting to see in the market, right, when you start to look at branching from your SaaS or infrastructure as a service models that most people are familiar with, moving into, again, this on-prem type of model, it does add a lot of benefits. And this is why we're starting to see a lot of momentum move towards these as a service subscription or consumption type models. And it really comes down to, again, that flexibility, right? It's modular, I can scale it. At the end of the day, all of the management of those on-premise infrastructure solutions can be managed, right? So when you look at your network and you look at your resources associated with managing that network, ultimately, can we wrap that into the overall as a service model and then build that into our operating budget, right? So
it really gives clients a very cloud-like experience when you think about having a solution that includes that post-implementation ongoing support. It gives them a lot of flexibility on the front end of picking a technology that they may or may not have the skill set in-house to be able to support. By wrapping Insights Managed Services around that, we're providing the client with a kind of a total end-to-end solution. And one very practical area that we've seen early on is this rate card type of an approach, where we're able to help configure and design a solution for a client And as they are looking at any expansions or go forward budgeting, they've got a very well-defined rate card of cost associated with, when I add these additional network devices, we know exactly how much that's going to add to our most often monthly cost for this. And it really gives them, and especially the financial organization, gives them an ability to predict and budget and plan much better than if they have to, each and every time they're going to acquire technology, have to go out and do a new bid or get new cost. We know how frequently the costs change in the market. So very powerful. We've heard from clients that say that is a very appealing aspect of the NaaS product, of the NaaS solution, I should say.
Yeah, it would have been really nice to have something like this during the tariffs that happened a few years ago, and we saw a lot of price increases, right? So, and it's a good point, John. I just want to emphasize something. So when you sign up for the HP Aruba NaaS solution, right? With Insight, we're going to provide you with a term contract, okay? It's not a lease contract, to be clear, okay? But I want to touch on a couple things real quick. You can do up to a 5-year term, okay? And what does that mean, right? When you add that to what John said, I now have essentially fixed pricing for 5 years. I mean, that's almost unheard of in the IT industry, but knowing that you've got that peace of mind as a client, as a budget owner, as somebody in IT that has an ever expanding network, or, hey, I just don't know if it's going to expand, but just having that peace of mind to say, I know exactly what it's going to cost me to add an AP, right? To add a switch, whatever the case may be, I know exactly what that monthly cost is going to be at a unit level, right? So having that longevity of that fixed pricing is super critical, especially again with everything going on in the economy right now. One of the other components that I think is also important, and also ever changing and becoming more and more important, is the sustainability impact, right? So when we talk about our ESG initiatives, right? Because this is under the as a service model, okay, the clients don't actually own this product, right? It's not on their books. It's not an asset. It's actually owned by HP Aruba, okay? But what happens at the end of that term, right? Hopefully you renew that contract, and maybe there's some new technology that came out over the term, and we'll look at upgrading that technology, right? So the ability to quickly refresh that technology, get the latest and greatest as part of that renewal, but also what do I do with all the networking gear that I'm replacing as part of that refresh or renewal? Well, HP steps in, right? And they're going to take the ownership back, the physical ownership back of those assets, and they're going to either repurpose them, refurbish them, whatever the case may be, but they're going to do it in a sustainable manner, right? Plus, you don't have to go through the headache as a client of trying to figure out what am I going to do with asset disposal, right? How much is that going to cost me? And how much is it going to cost me to do it the right way? And again, one of those peace of minds is that at the end of the term, right, when that equipment goes end of life, you know that you've got a trusted partner like HP Aruba that's going to do the right thing for the environment and make sure that those assets are either refurbished or put to good use, or they're going to be disposed of in a sustainable manner.
Good point.
So as you guys are viewing this, right, I don't want you guys to think that Tyler and John are here making up some of this stuff. So which we might be a little bit, but no, in all reality, you look at the big research firms like Gartner and IDC, Network World, this is their job, is to have these conversations both with OEMs, but organizations to understand what are they doing, right? Doing a bunch of surveys and analysis, and I mean, you can see here on the screen, I'm not going to drain it, but to go from 1% of on-premises NaaS solutions in organizations all the way up to 15% in really a 3 to 4 year period is phenomenal growth, right? And the reason we're seeing that growth is because of a lot of the things John and I just spoke about, right? Again, you look at IDC, again, another third party, call it unbiased, an analysis firm, a research firm. They're continuing to see more and more adoption of this NaaS solution within the enterprise space. Okay.
Well, and I would suggest that what we see here from Gartner, IDC, Network World, from a practical perspective, and the fact that I get the opportunity to kind of work in this X as a service model that we have developed within Insight day in and day out, the demand is rapidly growing. We're getting a significant amount of interest across all of the technology stacks for X as a service. And we know that the network, the HPE Aruba network as a service model is just going to take off as we get more and more comfortable around the different programmatic aspects of it. We're really predicting a lot of growth specifically in the network as a service area. And HPE has set this program up in a manner that we can bring it into kind of an already well-running machine for our X as a service and just keep moving forward. So we're seeing that type of energy as those statistics would point out.
Yeah, and I think if you look at it from again that on-prem motion, right? You've got your compute components, you've got your storage components. We're seeing a lot of traction in those lines of business as well, right? So it's not a singular line of business within the infrastructure of our clients that we're seeing this growth. We're also seeing it, really take off in the storage space, as well as compute, and to really take an approach of compute, storage, and networking all in a similar subscription, consumption, as a service type model, you're going to really start to see that force multiplier across your infrastructure when you, again, look at combining these components within your infrastructure and adopting really this as a service motion that we're seeing. So it's not just the networking side of the business, which is absolutely growing, as you can see here. And I know we see it here at Insight. I know HPE Aruba is definitely seeing it. They're definitely leaned in, and really the thought leadership that they put into this program and how to structure it is very mature. But we will obviously, as anyone knows within the IT space, if you don't continue to innovate, you're going to fall behind. So I would expect, and most likely we'll continue to see evolutions of this program, whether it's additional options, different ways to consume this technology, but it's going to continue to evolve. But I think where we're at right now with HPE's Aruba's program, it's a very, very solid program and foundation to really get this started. And even if we want to start in a POC type of environment, we're happy to stand up a POC and really walk through the adoption and make sure that solution is certified for you guys. And as clients, you start to see the value of it, and then we continue to expand, et cetera, from there. And that's, again, one of the benefits of as a service is you can take that POC and, once you get through, all the architecture and everything needed to do that, you got that rate card, and you're like, okay, now I want to expand. You know exactly how much it's going to cost, right? And you don't have to go through all those motions that you did initially to get that POC stood up. It's already there. We just need to know, okay, how much do we want to expand? We can bring in a network engineer, right, and really start figuring out, what that journey looks like for you guys, and just start adding that into that existing agreement with you guys, and ultimately, you guys can grow as much as you want. Ultimately,
we'll be ready.
Absolutely. All right, so just kind of shifting gears here a little bit. I want to kind of just double click on a couple key points, and then John, I want to toss it over to you to talk about managed network. But we touched on some of these topics, but one of the key aspects of an as-a-service model is it really accelerates that time to value, right? When you understand exactly what you need and it's being deployed, stood up, managed in a fairly quick timeline, right? And that upfront investment isn't expansive, right? You start to realize the benefit and that value much sooner than you would in a CapEx type scenario. So that is key to any CIO or director of IT is at what point does my investment start to show value, right? And really start to see that return on that investment. And in this model, that timeline is just exponentially accelerated. Again, we touched on this, but the predictability. So when you're talking to your finance stakeholders and you're trying to plan out budgets and what do you need, you know that right off the bat. Even if you know you're going to need, an extra 50 APs or 10 APs or 1,000 APs, whatever the case may be, you've got that rate card and you've got that pricing locked in for that term of that agreement, right? So that's going to be very critical, and you might put some of your budget holders or finance folks at ease to know that there's not going to be any surprises, at least not any surprises that you can't plan for and predict ultimately what that budget's going to look like post deployment. Okay.
Think about that as an organization is thinking about some M&A activity or something in an expansion perspective. There are so many different elements that they have to consider, and having as much real data as possible is going to help the company make the best decision they can. So that's one area where they know what it would look like from a network expansion perspective. They know what that cost would look like if they were to go into this market, or if they were to expand or acquire another company that they wanted to convert. So that's very powerful. It gives them a lot of good solid data to go into that.
Yeah, I mean, mergers and acquisitions is a great use case, right? At the end of the day, you kind of want to have a consistent network, right? You don't want to have to be managing multiple networks, maybe even multiple OEMs in some cases, right? Or even different levels of management, right? As you start to acquire those companies and fold them into your IT stack, right? How do you ensure that you've got that consistency, that experience, right, for your employees and your teammates? Because I know, having kids, when you take them out camping or somewhere, the first thing undoubtedly is, do they have Wi-Fi, right? And when you've got multiple environments and you're doing, the mergers and acquisitions, it's important to have that consistent network layer and that experience, so that again, that creates a strong employee experience. And this again allows you to scale up, right, and pull those companies you've acquired or are merging with, those locations into kind of that seamless environment. So definitely a good call out from an M&A perspective, John. And then real quick, so when you talk about the infrastructure and making sure it's ready, again, in this as a service model, right? Because ultimately HP Aruba owns those assets. Insight wants to come in from a management layer. We're going to ensure that infrastructure is ready to go. We've got those network engineers that say, okay, if you're expanding, how many people, what's your bandwidth, all of those components that go into making sure that business is supported, comes with you along the way, right? It's part of the value that we bring to these as a service models, is it's really kind of that turnkey solution, right? From when we do the envisioning, and we'll get into that in a second, but making sure we understand what your environment is, what you're trying to accomplish, what obstacles you might have, but ultimately architecting and engineering a solution that can expand and grow as your organizations do, and is monitored along the way. So that kind of gives me a little segue for you, John, to kind of start talking about is, okay, we've got a network stood up. What happens, right? Who manages it? What are the benefits of having somebody proactively managing that infrastructure? Can you just touch on that?
Absolutely. If you think about the process of a client acquiring any technology, one of the questions that has to be answered during that early process is, okay, once this is in place, how are we going to support it? How are we going to manage and operate, make sure it's performing to its peak capability, make sure if we do run into issues, we've got a quick way to resolve those issues, because as we all know, the network is the true backbone of the operation. And that's where Insight's managed services can really bring a lot of value to the table. We offer a world-class 24/7 by 365 managed services operation, which allows our clients to tap into that support capability. They acquire this technology, and we're able to show them that we can support it operationally day in and day out, handle the kind of the mundane tasks that come with any technology acquisition. And by doing so, if the client takes advantage of that, that really typically will free up resources that may have otherwise been tasked with the operational functions of the network. So we can free up resources. We can fill gaps where there might be skills that are not in place to take advantage of the technology. We can make sure that the technology that they have acquired is operating and performing at its peak, because we're monitoring and seeing what's going on in the environment. And most importantly, if something does take place within the network, we're in a position to identify the issue and remediate the issue, get the client's environment back up and running as quickly as possible. And if you think about it, someone has to do these steps. It's going to be either the client using their resources, or in our case, if they will take advantage of Insight's managed services, we can do that for them and really create this entire end-to-end as a service model for them to be able to take advantage of. Because we typically deliver this in a month-to-month cost basis, it really layers in very well with this type of a model. So I think there's a lot of great advantages for Insight to be able to bring these options to the table for our clients.
Thanks, John. What about security, right? I mean, there's no hackers these days, right? There's nobody trying to break into our networks and steal important information, right? So as part of that managed service, do we ensure that we're staying up to date with security patches and protocols? Is that part of that service as well?
Absolutely. That's probably one of the most foundational aspects of what we do in our managed services operations. We've got such strong ties with our OEM partners, HPE being a great example. When there is something going on that our OEM partners are aware of, and that requires them to release what we'll call an emergency patch, our clients depend on Insight to be able to deliver that out to their infrastructure in a very well prescribed manner, so that they are protected from any risks that have been identified. We spend a lot of time with our clients in their patch management programs as one of the core capabilities of managed services. So, security is on the top of everyone's list of priorities within their environment, and certainly our managed services can bring the security element to the table for our clients.
Yeah, the key word there being mitigate, right? It doesn't help us to figure that stuff out after the fact, right? So it's important in a managed environment, right, that you've got the resources that are thinking about all of these things, right, from security to performance to, what happens when something goes down, how do I support that, and ultimately how quickly can you get me back up and running, right? So taking that proactive approach to managing that wet work is ultimately, in my mind, really the only way to ensure that you've got those updates in, right? If there's been a potential risk identified, how do we ensure that both the firmware and the software associated with those products is up to snuff and really keeping that risk for our clients at bay.
So Tyler, why don't we wrap this up with that last slide we have about our methodology? It sounds like this would be a good way to bring this one to a close. And you and I talked about this, and I certainly let you elaborate what we want our clients to understand. What we want our sales force to understand is that we're bringing a very proven methodology to the table within the HPE Aruba network as a service, because we're not having to do something different than we do with our pursuits, our architecting, the validation. We go through the visioning with our client to understand exactly what the needs are. We're bringing that same methodology that's been proven time and time again into the network as a service model as well. You can see that we've got a very well-defined methodology around that, and because it doesn't differ from what Insight is accustomed to, we can really execute on this aspect of it in a model that our clients are used to. I'll let you elaborate a little further.
Yeah, no, I think it's important, right, with Insight being a solutions integrator, right? Our goal is not to sell you some product and see you in 3 years when you need some more product, right? Our job is really to ensure that from identifying an obstacle or a problem or a need from a client perspective, that we really understand from a client's perspective, what's their vision, right? What are they trying to accomplish, right? What's the outcome, right? Our goal at Insight and following that path of a solutions integrator is really to deliver those meaningful outcomes, right? How we get there, what technology, yes, those are important things. But it's also just as important to ensure that what a client wants as the outcome is what a client gets as the outcome. And it's important that this methodology, right, layers on top of, whether it's a CapEx model or a lease or an as-a-service model, the methodology works across the stack, whether it could even be devices, right, infrastructure, cloud. How are we managing all of these things? The methodology applies across the stack, right? What are we doing around data and AI? I mean, AI is kind of one of those things that's really hot right now. But this methodology allows us to ensure that we're identifying the right outcomes that our clients are looking to accomplish, right? And then we walk through this methodology of ensuring that we've got the right architecture, we've got the right OEM, and what does that roadmap look like for that OEM, right? Is something going to be coming out new in a year that, maybe we want to start and looking at a longer term roadmap, but also as we look at doing the deployment, right? As that production, is it being adopted? How do we validate it, certify it? And then we don't just stop there, right? Now that you're up and running, cool. We don't stop there, right? At the end of the day, our job is to ensure that along the life of that technology and that service, we are there every step of the way, right? And that's really where we bring in our operational folks to ensure that they're having those monthly, quarterly touch points with your stakeholders to ensure that, ultimately those outcomes continue to remain. But also, is there an opportunity for optimization, right? As we know, right, technology evolves, it innovates, and we need to be at the forefront of that with our clients as well. So as we have those regular touch points, how do we ensure that we're optimizing that outcome and continuing to innovate for our clients? And then obviously, we'll go into the billing and invoicing, all that fun stuff. But, at the end of the day, it's making sure that we stand up the right solution for you, but also we support that solution with you along the life of that solution, and make sure that if there's opportunities to enhance it, optimize it, if we need to pivot based off of, changing core objectives that a client is trying to deliver, maybe those outcomes changed a little bit or those priorities adjusted. This methodology allows for the ability to adapt and pivot and really continue to deliver on that value. So, John, any other closing comments you'd make?
I'm just excited about our partnership with HPE. The HPE Aruba Network as a Service is going to be a great program for Insight. Can't wait to get everybody up and running.
Awesome, John. And thank you to our viewers that have viewed this webinar. We hopefully you found it useful. And again, if you want to learn more, you can visit insight.com, and we'll certainly be reaching out to you and seeing how we can become your solution integrator here at Insight and supporting your HPE Aruba needs. Thank you.